There we go. Good morning, cousin Dave Way. How are you?
Hella good. Let me press this button to let
All
Zoom know
right.
that I know we're recording.
Great. Great. So, it's lovely to hear your Northern California accent. Being in Arizona the past 20 years almost, nobody says hella around here.
Ah, shit. That is definitely distinctly Northern California Bay Area slang.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in Stockton. So, we have another like distinctive slang. We say hecka even, like it's not even hella. They say hecka out there. Like, what the heck is that,
That's
right?
what I said when hella was still a curse word. I would say hecka.
Right, right. Like when you're a little kid, right?
Yeah.
And then there's adults that still use it, and you're like, wait a minute, aren't you like 40?
Pardon me, I'll be boiling water and serving myself tea as we do this.
Oh, that's wonderful. Hey, thank you again for that tea that you forwarded my way. And also thank you to Zachary Krebs for purchasing that for me. That really helped me out with the asthma that I had recently. I've been going through some flare-ups with my autoimmune condition with the psoriatic arthritis. So
Mhm.
that really helped me get some of the inflammation under control and that sort of thing. And
Great.
I just met up with my rheumatologist yesterday, so things are looking a lot better. Like we've got my diagnosis nailed down. Like there's no other connective tissue diseases or arthritis antibodies or anything like that to worry about. And my X-rays are looking great for my hands and ankles and wrists and feet. So
Okay.
um, I have a new medication coming that should help me with my immune system modulation. And then, my plan is, of course, to kind of dial in my diet a little better and, get some of that inflammation sources out and, try and get some herbs, dialed in as well. So,
Wow, you got a rap sheet. What still works?
what still works? It's a good question. I've had a pretty traumatic life, honestly. I had a lot of car accidents when I was a kid, and my stepdad broke my face when I was a kid, so that led to a lot of like neurological issues over the years from the brain injury, and then I had an acquired brain injury as an adult from a stroke that I experienced.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so people that have the kind of arthritis that I have are 3 times more likely to have stroke and heart arrhythmia. So thankfully the heart arrhythmia went away and I've mostly recovered from, everything else. And
Mm.
uh, I really credit the Qigong for a lot of that. Um, yeah.
Matt, I've never taken the time to hear your story, and thank you for being vulnerable and being recorded that in public with it.
Oh, you're
But
welcome.
yeah,
A lot of people
please,
have asked me to
after
talk.
this, let's schedule some time together. I'd love to work with you one-on-one over Zoom, and gift you a session or two and see if I can help you through some of these projects.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, you know, People in the last few years have asked me to step forward with like sharing what it is that I've been given through the years because I really needed it. The seniors in our lineages have been very generous with me. Um, and because of that, I feel like the understanding of Negong that I have is a little different, right? So, like
Yeah,
when you literally come from like paralysis to strength and Fajin, it's like a different experience all the way around. It's a
for
spectrum
sure.
that is more informed as to like, oh, your knees are bad. Okay, well, I've experienced that too. Like, let's modify this way.
Yeah,
And so I have the ability to be a little bit more, open with my students about my own experience and be like, hey, like let's modify it. Like I don't have to put you through all the difficult stuff. Like I've been there, like I understand what it's like to be in pain and suffering and like we don't have to make this the hard version of the exercise right now. Like we can modify it.
you know, that's a really big treasure right there, is the freedom to change, because some of us get into that dogma of like, no, this is the way Sifu did it. This is the way it should be. And this is the way you should do it too. And you're
Right.
basically putting people into cookie cutter molds. And of course there's going to be injuries, and of course there's going to be pain and aches, and because we're not 5'2" Chinese guys. You know.
Well, I'm only 5'7", so
Oh, still, yeah.
yeah.
But
I
yeah, that's awesome that you're able to modify and tailor to the needs and constitution of an individual, because you yourself have needs that you've had
right.
to navigate. And so you have an experience that's relatable. I think that's profound and makes you an excellent teacher. The people that have overcome the hardest difficulties make the best teachers, right? When it comes to heroin addiction, I want to learn from someone who overcame heroin addiction. When it comes to alcoholism, I want to learn from people that have overcome alcoholism. I want to learn from the people that have been through the trenches,
Yeah.
right? So because you've been through the trenches, there's a lot of hearts that you can relate to and communicate with that otherwise people couldn't. There's people that do Qigong because they love it, and there's people that do Qigong because they need it.
Right.
And you know, you can touch a lot of hearts because you've come through a really rough patch, man. So peace upon your heart, man. Peace upon your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big admirer of what you guys are doing up there in Northern California, preserving this really traditional Wudang line. The tea that you've sent me the last couple of years has just been absolute top quality. I see that you're pouring your water now. Is there anything you'd like to talk about as far as your tea companies going on right now?
Company, no.
Well, I mean, you have a nonprofit organization, right? So people
Yeah.
donate to you, and then they can receive tea, and I feel like it's something that deserves some exposure, because I have people that will have tea with me, and they're like, "Where did you get this? It's amazing." And like there's a tea shop in here in Central Phoenix, and they're like, "How do I get this?" They're like, "You got to make a phone call." It's a personal relationship, like that's the beauty of it, right?
Wow, you just make it sound so gangster. That's cool. Uh, yeah, um, I I just love tea. There's people that know their tea really well, and I just love tea. And thank you for the compliment, and I'm glad you had a wonderful experience with our teas. Um, However, you know, my teacher would be very modest, and he would say, even bad tea served with a big heart can be amazing.
Mm,
And so, you know, our teas, they're special. You know, they come from very select sources. Still yet, it's the heart of the service where the magic is, you know.
you know,
Uh,
I experienced a lot of that heart energy when the first cake that you sent. I literally felt like I was kind of on an acid come up. I've got some drug experience, so that's the closest thing I could describe it. It was like, oh wow, geez, I feel that one, the whole world, and my heart, like my sternum, literally popped a few times, like tick 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 tick. I
wow.
was like, oh, that's great.
Wow. Okay. Well, I know what tea to send you next time.
Believe me, brother, I'm doing some work. Actually, I'm in Tucson this week doing some demolition stuff with a friend, and I'll definitely be hitting you up for some tea soon. I need some more of that in my life.
Yeah. Uh, I sent you Mang Fei San. You had mentioned lung stuff.
Right.
And so I sent you Busy Lung Mountain Tea. And that's literally the name of the peak. And it's so tall and it's so steep and sheer that if you climb it, your lungs will be busy. And so they call it Busy Lung Mountain because it's very, very hard and high elevation too. So, you know, the higher you get, the thinner the air. And then if you're working really hard, it's not an easy climb. And so the tea that's up there is pristine. You
Mm,
know, you figure one, the high elevation, the rugged terrain, there's not a lot of traffic, certainly
okay.
no automobile traffic, minimal foot traffic.
Is
And
it like
so,
those pictures I see on the internet with the extremely steep cliffs and very narrow trails on the edges of them?
mhm, mhm.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
except it'll be in like, banyan groves and, you
Mm,
know, arbor forests, these are wild tea trees. It's not like the sloped terraces with the little tea bushes with people bending over to pick. No, no, no. These are like wild tea
so it's
trees that were
like a
kind of,
tea vineyard. Then it's not cultivated. It's more like allowed to just be its own natural
yeah,
plant.
yeah, think more permaculture style as opposed to
Okay.
monocrop style, right?
Right.
When we think terraced hillsides, it's monocrop. All they
Right.
grow is tea. Whereas this is more like a banyan grove where it's
Mm,
permaculture. There's like a whole ecology around
right.
it. And
I'm
so,
sure that synergy in the soil makes things much different.
yeah, yeah. And plus, it's Yunnan province, so it's on the tail end of the Himalayan mountain range. It's on like that southwest tail of China. And so the deep, deep, rich minerality in the soil too, just by
Like
virtue of being,
former Tibetan Empire area.
you got it,
Yeah.
right? So it's getting all that Kunlun kind of Tibetan mountain runoff. And you got these 800-year-old wild trees that grandmas literally have to climb into to harvest. And the
Right.
leaves and sprouts are the size of their palms.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I was really astounded by that first cake you sent me, like how much the tea expanded from, like breaking the cake apart. I was like, okay, I'll take this little chip and we'll use that. And it just was so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to handle all this. Like,
Say grower, not a shower.
right.
Yeah, man, the teas are great. So Mang Fei San, to go back to that, high elevation, so minimal traffic, so no pollution, right?
Mm,
Also high elevation, so it's a rugged plant. It's a hardy plant, because the conditions are harder, the climate's rougher, and so it takes a stronger plant to survive in that environment. Um, Not only stronger plant, but less bugs and pests because they don't survive in those conditions. And
yeah. If it's
so,
cold, they're not happy, right?
yeah, so you don't have all these rodents and molds and pests and things, and
Mm,
then you don't have to spray them with shit too. So
right.
it just speaks to a better product all around. And then you you get it from these small artisan families that have held these lands and their titles for generations. And so you get lineages of tea cultivars, and then you maybe get like 5-6 hands that are out there in the fields harvesting, and then maybe like 2 or 3 hands that are actually roasting. So you get less than a dozen people go into the production of this stuff.
That's amazing.
You're very fortunate to have these relationships. And so, I'm a father now, and when my son was born, we did a natural birth, right? We're one of
Okay.
those granola hippies, right? And so we did the childbirth out of a swimming pool in our living room. And when my wife goes into labor, I don't call the midwife, I don't call the doula, I don't call the birthing center, I don't call our parents, I call China, right? And they just happen to already be in spring harvest. So I said, hey, whatever you guys pick today, set it aside. And so, because we have these relationships with the farms, we were able to say, hey, everything you harvest today is mine. And it's to commemorate my son's birth. And then they made this beautiful cake. They pressed it into these beautiful, nice pieces. And so now I got them in storage so that when my son turns 20, your dad loves you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us.
Mm,
It puts a
mm.
lot of things in context as to your generosity with me so far, and I must say that it's amazing. And I hope that the world can experience how open your heart is. Um, I
Oh,
talked to Qigong Chris recently, and he says Dave's my favorite, right? He's like Dave's my favorite grandson. So, um, I can't blame him. The tea is enough to open your heart. I'd love anybody who gave me that, right?
wow. Can I ask your relationship with Grandpa?
Yeah, so I learned from Tim White here in Tempe, Arizona, and he learned from Chris in the 90s.
And
Um,
that's connected with Max, I believe, right? The
y-
Tibetan systems.
yes, so a lot of the material that we did is very much related to Vajrasattva practice. So we did a lot of Vajrasattva work and Bagua Negong, and then at the end we also did some Reiki.
That's it. That's the lineage. Yeah.
And I got the Kujikiri, and
I was
I've
just
been
about to say, where's the ninjutsu?
right, and yeah, I got that side of it a little bit. I didn't get like the Saito Ryu stuff because the heir of Saito Ryu is teaching here in Scottsdale, Arizona, so nobody teaches that but him locally, and just out of respect. And he has a very thorough program at his school here locally. Um, so yeah, I mainly got Bagua Negong and some push hands experience with Tim, as well as the Vajrayana work. Um, so that was about a year long intensive, and I actually worked for Tim for a little while. So at work, he'd show me some extra stuff, and I'd been doing Negong for about 9 years at that point when I studied with him. So that year was kind of like, okay, well, here's a huge upgrade for you. Welcome to a new level, and we're going to pull you up a bit. And thanks to that purification energy, I was able to have some things in my body expressed that need to be repaired surgically. So I got facial reconstructive surgery after having my face broken as a child. Like there was enough damage internally that I was not able to breathe from the left side of my face at all. It was blocked at this upper and lower sinuses. So
Whoa.
yeah, um, it's been a big journey, and that surgery was one of the most beneficial things in my life, honestly. Like I can breathe so much better now. There's things that are more accessible to me in meditation when I sit down, like things actually happen that weren't there before. Like, oh yeah, that left side's really kicking on a lot more now that I have, both sides of my face open to air. Yeah.
The little things we take for granted, man.
Right. And that surgery experience also allowed me to experience like some of the fruits of the path, right? Because there was a day where I didn't have any painkillers between the surgery and when my insurance finally decided that I could have some opiates. So I was literally sitting in a recliner in agony with my face throbbing from the surgery for a good 30 hours. And through that experience, I eventually got to a breakthrough point of just bliss in life. And it was pretty amazing. uh,
Double yin turns yang, man. There you go.
yeah. And it was one of those experiences that I will always treasure. Like that extreme pain just led to something that was incredible. So that seems to be a recurring thing that I'm trying to transform because I don't feel it's necessary anymore. Like I've recovered enough to a point where I feel like the pain aspect going forward is going to be lesser, and that's encouraging.
Right. Right on.
So yeah, I just wanted to touch base real quick on like the Guangping Yang side of things too, because I've learned some of the Han family Yichuan from Nick Domich. And he learned the Guangping from uh, Henry Look. So we're cousins on a couple of sides.
Wow, man. Trip out. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. The Guangping lineage for me, I'm much tighter with Dragon Gate in that I've kept up with the content, I've kept up with the instructors, I've kept up with the material. Guangping, I never learned.
Okay.
But I was at Wenwu School here in the East Bay, and
Okay.
I studied under YC Chang.
Okay.
But I did Shaolin.
I see. I
Yeah.
remember that you were at the school. I didn't know what you got there, you know, and that's one of the things I feel like a treasure that's being lost is that Shaolin right now. Like there's not many people that are carrying that forward.
Yeah, it's funny the story, you know, I was in college and I was in Hawaii, and that's when I started with Dragon Gate. And funny thing, I never even met Chris or Ray. I only knew my teacher, Bruce.
Okay. So that's
And
Bruce Chu, right?
Chu, right? And I trained with him for the 5 years that I was in college. And it was 5 years because I took a year off. I quit
Yeah.
everything to only do Kung Fu. And then my mom got mad. She forced me to, tidy up school for the last year.
Right.
And so I just scrapped whatever credits I could together to get out of school. But anyway, so 5 years of training in the Dragon Gate, I became a teacher in it. I go to Wenwu school because I went to some Shaolin Academy in Hawaii. Ao Sang, an amazing master. He's in the Martial Arts Hall of Fame. Ao Sang, I went to see him on my last day in Hawaii. And I was like, I want to learn Chin Na, White Crane, Hung Guard, Tiger. What you got? I want to learn it.
I want to be a kung fu encyclopedia
Yeah.
like the school
And he was
guys.
like, how much time you got? It's like, I'm going back home tomorrow. He's like,
Yeah.
how much money you got? I was like, I got $20 in my pocket. I had no idea how rude I was being. Right? And so he's like, first off, give me that $20 and show me one move. And I just did the opening, and he's like, stop right there. He's like, just do that for an hour. And so I was like, this motherfucker, I did it, but I was pissed off the whole time.
Right.
And then, so I went to Shaolin out of spite. I
Okay.
thought I was already the shit. I was already a teacher at Dragon Gate. I went to Shaolin Kung Fu out of spite because I was like, this Shaolin master in Hawaii says I ain't got no Kung Fu. I'm going to learn his Kung Fu and come back and do it better than him. That's the attitude I have. So when I got to California, I was like, all right, I want to look for the best Shaolin school. And I looked at the white pages. I just happened to find Wenwu School. And my big arrogant ass, I go in there, I'm all slouching. YC wasn't, he had already retired at that point. He was upstairs painting,
Right.
right?
He was a
And so it's
famous
just,
calligrapher, right?
yeah, it was basically just a Shaolin kids class.
Okay.
I had no idea that the master was upstairs doing calligraphy. Right? So I'm just sitting, I'm watching. I'm used to doing applications. I'm used to doing drills. I'm used to doing sparring. And they're just stretching for an hour. And then they do nothing but forms for an hour. I'm like, I sat there for 2 hours observing the class. I'm like, what is this shit? I want to learn this,
So was
right?
that a northern Shaolin or a southern
Northern
Shaolin?
Shaolin, Northern
Okay.
Shaolin. And then the master comes walking down the stairs. And I'm like, oh shit, that's the dude. And I sat up straight. Then he like kind of scoffed at me and he went into the kitchen. And then I
Right.
looked up at the walls and I noticed all the photos of him. He was standing on sand. And there were no footprints in the sand.
That's amazing.
And it dawned on me. I was like, oh shit, this Kung Fu is real. And then so I started that day. And I enrolled. I did that for a bunch of years. I did all their basics. I did their 10 lines of the spring foot, and I did their long fist set. That was enough. If you had chin to toe, if you had the 30 basics, if you had the long fist, and if you had this spring foot, you were then officially considered a coach.
From what I understand, the Changchuan and the Tantui that you learned is very influential later on in learning the Taiji in that system. Is that what your understanding is?
Yeah. Yeah. So the only thing is when I finished Wenwu, so now I'm a teacher at Dragon Gate and I'm a teacher at Wenwu. now I'm like, I want to go to Wudang.
Mm.
And so YC Chang hand wrote an invitation letter for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was supposed to go to Shaolin.
In his beautiful calligraphy, he wrote you a
Yeah.
handwritten letter.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, you're being very generous with your listening. It's a crazier story than that. So I decide to go to the temple, right? I wanted to go to China. It was clear to me that I had to give up everything. I had to go to China to train. I was at that phase, but I was caught. I was like, am I going to go to Shaolin or am I going to go to Wu-Tang?
Oh, Kitty, please don't
Right?
eat my headphones. Thank you.
And so here I am at a Shaolin school. I'm now a teacher at the Shaolin school. YC Chang is the shit. He was supposed to be the fucking abbot and he turned it down. And so he had the back door entry to the legit Shaolin shit, not the big schools. He had entry to the family Shaolin shit.
Mm.
And so he's like, you want to go to China? I'll set you up. So I was like, yes, I'll go.
Right.
But then my Kung Fu brother at the time, peace upon his heart, Sam Tripp, he gave me some really sagely advice. He said, Dave Way, you're already 25, going on 26. Shaolin, you should have started when you were 9, right? 5 even. And you're going to be 40, 50 soon. And you're already 6'5". Are you sure you want to do this acrobatic, hard style of Shaolin? Maybe consider going to Wudang and practicing something that can carry you into your years.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam Tripp, peace upon his heart, you know, he's a wild guy, but that was insight and wisdom. And so I'm thankful for my older brother to this day because I chose to go to Wudang instead of Shaolin. Now, who knows what path that would have taken me on, but I'm quite
The
content.
cat's over there.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Just a moment. Let me put that back. Gosh. Sorry about the kitty
So
there.
yeah, as you said, Master YC Chang, he wrote me the invitation letter, but he also wrote me a calligraphy piece, 2 of them, the kind where one goes on each side of the door. And one side, it said, the mysterious mountains of Wudang. On the other side, where all the great masters meet, right? Boom, fat ass calligraphy, right? So I get a dope ass invitation letter speaking to my character, my accomplishments, and everything I've studied. I get this dope ass calligraphy as a gift. I come present it. I meet my teacher. I travel all the way to Wudang. At that point, you had to catch a 26-hour train ride. Now there's an airplane that flies right into the fucking mountain. It's ridiculous.
Could you clarify what year this was?
It's 2006.
Okay.
There were still dirt roads in rural China and farmers on the streets, and it was still developing, right? So I went in 2006. I made my way to Wudang. I meet my master. I immediately get down on my hands and feet. I hand him this invitation letter and this gift. My master at the time was a farmer. He fucking threw it over his shoulder. He says, class starts at 3. Be there. I'm like, okay.
Right?
You don't even care that it's like,
This is my life. What do you want? Oh, that's amazing. The stuff that we like attach so much value to sometimes, and then we encounter these other masters. They're like, yeah, you know, I had a really blissful moment with a good fart the other day. And you're like, what? Wait, what? Like, yeah, it was a really good one. Like, ah, okay. Like that broke me for a moment. I gotta process this, master. Thank you. You know, so it's kind of funny, like the things that our bodies are capable of allowing us to experience, and the spectrum of those experiences and how that informs us spiritually, right? One of the things I really value about Taoism is how anchored into the physical form it is. And one of my experiences, like, there's bliss to be found in almost every function that we have if you pay attention to it long enough and give it its due, and really like look into what's there, like there's something amazing about almost everything in our body. And I feel like that's one of the big values of these practices, you know, because we're so disembodied as a culture. We're told that our sexuality is corrupt and that our feelings are untrue, and that, you know, that our opinions and thoughts are completely a lie, and all this other stuff all the time on a regular basis. And if you can return to your physicality, a lot of this outside interference just kind of drops off like ducks with water off their backs, right? And I find that, you know, regardless of what your beliefs are, if you have a physical practice like, you know, exercise, I find a lot of value in things like Pilates and kettlebell swinging, and like Indian maces, stuff like that, with this like concentric eccentric movement. I find there's a lot of exercises out there that really enhance what we already do. Could you comment on that?
Bro, the Chi and the Li connection is real. And funny you mentioned all those heavy things. I got maces, jewelries, clubs, and bells, and all kinds of fun little toys tucked away in my corner. I love those things. I agree with you. I love how you're talking about finding the bliss in each moment too, and then there's always something to enjoy, and coming from someone of your journey, that you've had a lot of bitter to contrast the subtle sweets against. And so the average person, maybe doesn't have the hardship to reflect against. It's like they've always had hot running water. They've always had electricity.
They've always had
always
shelter.
They've always been able to press a button and then food is there.
All of their teeth are intact. There's all these privileges that we have here in the Western world that,
I like that I can breathe through my left side.
Right.
So yeah, it takes someone who's endured extreme hardship to appreciate the subtle sweetness. It's funny, some people trauma is not getting the pancakes instead of waffles.
Right.
It's like, I wanted waffles, I get pancakes. Complete.
Or my brother pushed me off the boat when I was 18, and now I have triggers with water. Like,
yeah.
You're still alive, like you could swim, right? Like,
yeah, it's interesting, how people relate to hardship and trauma. And what's one person's stepping stone is another person's grave, so.
Well, that is one thing that Uncle Ray, when I did the Reiki master training with him on his online course, he really communicated to us how important it was for us to stay centered and try and recall that, this yin and yang dance that we all do, these 5 elements, 8 trigrams, it's all a relative thing from our position, from where we are, right? And so we have to recognize that for us, something could be the simplest thing as possible, and then for somebody else, it's the hardest thing in the world, right? So for instance, me, I love to read. I'm hyperlexic. I taught myself to read before I was 5 years old. And I can take a novel down in a few hours. It's like sitting down for a movie. I can read a book. Why would I want to watch a movie? So there's like a different level of ease with that ability. And then my sister is dyslexic, so she doesn't have that level of ease, but she's also a UC Berkeley graduate. So like it can be somebody's stepping stone, just like you mentioned a moment ago. Your obstacle can be your CD, right? Like that can be the thing that empowers you.
That's Kung Fu.
Right.
Turn your weakness into your strength.
Yeah.
Wow. Matt, you mentioned other things too in that last sharing, where you talked about having a physical practice contributes a lot to one's experience of the world. And I can absolutely speak to that as well. Because you mentioned, doesn't just have to be the Kung Fu, it could be the Pilates, it could be the kettlebell swinging, it could be dance, it could be clown school.
Right. or
You know,
flow
all
arts. I don't know if you're familiar with the people that do the fire spinning and that sort of thing. Like that is so mentally centered, and they're
oh,
physically waving. They're doing a lot of the same mechanics we do to use weapons, right? And
oh
they're
yeah,
just spinning a staff with fire on the end. So
for sure.
it's there's the human body can only move in so many ways, and we all have the same energetic systems, right?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to contribute to that conversation and say that it works in medicine too. And the best doctors have a practice, right? I've been a professor at a number of these Chinese medicine schools here in California. I've lectured at a bunch of premier places all over the world. Hands down, in all the clinics and all the experience, the best doctors also have a practice. Be it a physical, like they bike or they exercise something rigorous, or even like they meditate and pray, they have a spiritual or ritual thing or a devotional thing, or they volunteer regularly. They're up to something. you know
Right.
the best doctors, the best healers are up to something. And the other ones that aren't so good, maybe it's just a job. They do it to make ends meet. Oh, I chose it because it pays money.
Or my parents pressured me into medical school,
Yeah.
which happens to a lot of immigrants here in the United States.
Yeah. And then what do? You get a bullshit medical system with bullshit standards, and then people just look at your charts and don't even make eye contact with you, and
Yeah.
chop you full of drugs and prescribe all these
Well,
procedures.
that is one thing that, as adults, like we have to be empowered patients, right? Like we have to make the choices for ourselves as to how we're going to manage our health.
Yeah.
And, one thing with Western medicine that I recommend anybody do is just switch providers. Like if you don't feel that your
Mm,
provider is empathetic to your needs for health, if they're not sitting there and listening to what it is you have to say about your body and what you are experiencing, find somebody else.
for sure.
Insurance networks are pretty big, and let's face it, like not every doctor's terrible.
Mm,
um and so you don't always have to take the first one you get. And I've gone through a number of doctors through the years, and I am a very empowered patient. I will just say, hey, I need somebody else, this is not working for me.
right
um
on.
and so I recommend that to a lot of people because of my experiences with specialists and all of that through the years. It's like, listen, you're not healthy.
That's got to be all the harder now in a world of COVID, where a lot of these intakes are done online or automated.
Yeah. Although that does have some advantages for other things. So for instance, I have a therapist for PTSD,
Mm,
and that's really helped me through the years going through talk therapy and helping to contextualize how my feelings are. And then that actually helps me dissolve them. You know, so that it's useful for the alchemical side as well.
got it.
um, to have somebody to just kind of like play handball with, right? Like these are my feelings and this is what's going on in my head and my situation. And, like sometimes it's really helpful to have somebody say, that's a perfectly reasonable way to navigate this situation. Like there's good reason for that feeling, right?
Mm,
And so, a lot of people are gaslit as children into your feelings aren't valid. These things are not something that you should be exhibiting or doing, right? And it's like, I'm pretty sure that this is a place where, like I may not act on something, but the feeling is there and I have to acknowledge it. And when it passes, it does. But that's the thing, is if you don't acknowledge it, if you're not aware of it, it won't pass. And it took me 4 tries to get somebody that was actually worthwhile to talk to.
wow.
Yeah. So it took me a while. I found somebody that was a recovered addict that got through it. Like you mentioned earlier, if you're trying to quit heroin, you want to talk to somebody that's quit heroin, right? So if you're trying to recover from trauma, you want to talk to somebody that's recovered from trauma. So it's very helpful to have somebody who's at least open to listening. Like not everybody has a very good connection with friends and family in this society. A lot of our family members are abusive, and when we have to set boundaries with them in this world, You know, it can be very difficult because you lose a connection to the people around you. So it's it's a difficult experience sometimes in the United States, right? Like we have a very violent society, and so like coming through that, you have to, going forward, decide who's in your life and like what it is that your life wants to look like, right? I don't know about you, but where I grew up in Stockton, we had drive-bys and, you know, like I remember people running over other people's dogs for revenge. And, you know, like I had friends that died of cancer because my mom worked for the Cancer Society. Like it was a pretty chaotic upbringing for me anyway.
Stockton was rough.
Yeah,
You
man.
were
And then,
you were there 80s, 90s?
yeah, 85 to 2001.
Rough
So
time. What age group were you at that time? Middle
uh,
school, high school?
basically, I was born in Stockton and I moved out my sophomore year of high school. And I got sent to Arizona because I was helping sell stolen PlayStation 2s from Oakland. Uh,
Matt, there's a reason why you and I get along so well.
right? Like I don't know if you remember when the PlayStation 2 came out. You know, like there was a shortage nationwide. That was when some crates fell off the boat. You know, like
Yeah,
came from Japan and right to the back of a truck. Like,
yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. So I remember Stockton in that era. I'm from Richmond, Iron
okay,
Triangle. And
ooh,
so we had our share of nasty too. I was born in Richmond Hospital, which is now a mental institution. Little foreshadowing there, middle Mr. Novel Reader. Uh, Born and raised in Richmond, went to JFK High School, jungle full of killers. And
right.
I remember Columbine happened, and we thought it was the most hilarious thing.
Right. I got a gun pointed at me in fifth grade for my shoes. You know, I was like, oh, somebody shot at school. So what?
For real. It's like, oh, they only care because it's middle America because it's finally hit a white school, but it
Right.
happens every day in our neighborhoods. No one
Well,
cares.
where I grew up was for the first few years of my life, from like 0 to 4 or 5, was literally just down the street from Cleveland Elementary School, where there was I think it was 1985 or 86 in the early part. Somebody shot up that school, and my uncle knew that person. You know, like that's how small a town Stockton is. It's literally 300,000 people, and they have twice as many homicides between New Year's Day and the end of February this year than the county I live in Arizona has had in the past 3 years. You know, like that's insane. It's
Yeah.
it's a tiny little place and people just die everywhere for no reason.
Yeah. Wow, man. And it's rarely known too. It's like only people can from California can relate to the hood that Stockton is.
Right.
Is Oakland takes the cake. Compton, Watts, yeah, these things take the cake. No one thinks of Stockton or even Richmond,
Right.
but it's often these smaller towns that have a higher crime per capita
Mm-hmm.
that actually makes it more violent and dangerous. It's like,
Right.
sure, I remember going to Baltimore. Sure, I remember going to DC. I remember being in Chicago. But those places were huge and the populations were huge. So, yeah, there's crime. But
Well, you
try
know,
going where the populations are small and the cities are small and the towns are small and everyone knows each other.
I don't know how Richmond was as far as jobs were, but I remember NAFTA just gutted Stockton because there used to be canneries and like an international shipping port there, inland shipping port from, like they could come in through the bay inland to Stockton directly with a giant shipping container and just drop it off right there in the port inland. And then you go right up the I-5 and down the I-5 and the 99.
Whoa.
And so there was a lot of like, you know, crime trafficking with that stuff too, because there was all those highways, and the four going to the Bay Area was also going through there. So you have this like intersection of highways that just makes it incredibly convenient to traffic things.
Whoa. I bet there was so much human trafficking in that.
I'm not familiar with that. Honestly, personally, I don't know. I can't comment. But I'm not gonna doubt it, right? Like every kind of dirt was there. And we
I
had,
know it's a big deal in Oakland from the
right.
Oakland courts. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it was happening, and who knows how much of it was like our own government doing deals with like, weird back end political stuff. Like there's all this weird stuff when it comes to that sort of thing. But it is what it is.
I like you, Matt. I'm a Taoist with a tinfoil top knot. I like you.
Right. I've been around a little while, and when I was in my 20s, I worked in like IT and customer service, and I started meeting these guys that were like sons of like nobility in Eastern Africa, and they were telling me about this like international monetary interference with their countries. And I believe it was Robert W. Smith, one of the internal arts teachers and early writers on internal kung fu. That was literally his job. was economic interference for the CIA. So like there's like these ties between our kung fu families and some of these like Republican nationalist forces from China that moved over to Taiwan and were stuck in Burma after World War II, and the CIA and the heroin trade. Like some of this stuff like really happened, and these are people that we know in our kung fu communities. Like Zheng Manqing was straight up a propagandist, and he had a lot of CIA contacts. Like let's be real here. This stuff, it's out there, and
All declassified.
right. You can get on Freedom of Information Act and search people's names, and oh, hey, look at that. Uh, my uncle worked for the CIA in the 1980s doing satellite communications, and then my second or first cousin Ted, once removed, did linguistics and then satellite communications in Germany. So one was in the Azores and one was in Germany. So they were monitoring like African communist movements and Eastern Europe, both of these gentlemen. So, um,
Damn.
there's a lot of this stuff going on that is interesting. Um, but I don't know much about it personally, right? Like my own experience, like I wasn't in these positions. I just hear the stories, right? So do I have reason to doubt these men? Do I have reason to doubt the documents they've shown me? No. Um, like when you can literally tell somebody exactly what to search on the government's website to look up where the reports are, like it's pretty obvious they know what they're talking about. Um, so that is something growing up that I was always curious, like why do we have so much violence? Like there was no reason for much of this stuff, right? Like, and a lot of it was just we gotta fund this stuff going on in other international affairs, and let's destabilize the ghetto. Freeway Ricky Ross blew the door wide open on that. But
Real freeway Rick Ross, huh?
yeah,
Not the
yeah.
one who owns the wing stops.
No, not the rapper. The right. We kind of got off topic here, but it is related to who we are and what we do.
It's
I'm
all
dead
one.
serious. Yeah, yeah. And so like a lot of if you look into the history of the kung fu people, like sorry, the dog's acting up in the background. So like Yang Luchan like taught special forces in China. Like he taught riflemen and mortarmen how to do hand-to-hand combat, you know? Um, so, like close quarters combat. Push hands is all about close quarters, right? So it's one of those things that we often forget. Dong Hai Chuan was an assassin. Like there's all of this connection to political movements and stuff in China that this is historically connected to. And it's important that we understand what our seniors did and what these arts are intended for when we're doing these physical movements.
For sure.
Um, and that's one of the reasons that I've really valued through the years some of the experiences of my teachers. My first exposure to Kung Fu was from a Mexican guy named Tim Torres. And he was my mentor in the tobacco industry. When I was a young man, I was really passionate about cigars. And he was Yucatec Mayan ethnicity, and he had a very traditional rolling method that he learned from his grandfather, and that was like a generational treasure in his people, because the tobacco is a medicine, spiritually, from that perspective. And he took me through learning about the different parts of the plant that are used in the construction, how to do the construction, how to like cure, ferment, age, how long it is. Like he helped me identify like, oh, this one's only 8 years old, this one's 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old, 20-year-old tobacco, 30-year-old tobacco, 110-year-old tobacco that his grandfather rolled. Like I smoked 2 of those in my whole life.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a different kind of experience, and very similar to like what you were describing, this relationship with the people in the mountain for the tea, in that he had a relationship with his family members going back generations who farmed this land, and they knew how to traditionally take advantage of the weather patterns and all of this other stuff, and how to use the different parts of the plant to create a medicine for their people. And so that level of understanding enabled me to work in the commercial side very easily. And I did an e-commerce website for cigars for a few years there, as a manager. And my health degraded very quickly when I was doing all of that, because I was drinking a lot. And that was about the time when I had the stroke. And he was like, okay, well, I've been doing Kung Fu for about 20 years. And I've recently been doing like some indoor stuff with this, obscure branch of Tai Chi. And, I had no idea about any of it. I did Japanese arts as a kid. I did new school Aikido in Stockton, where we actually trained knife disarms that I used to save my own life.
Wow.
So that's like pre-World War II Aikido that descends from um, Michio Hikatsuchi Michio, I think his name is. And that was John Smart Sensei who headed up the school. And one of his apprentices was my primary instructor as a kid. And, we got sword and staff and dagger drills. And, when you're a kid in Stockton, that's stupid useful. Like knowing how to disarm somebody that's trying to stab you is good. Um, so I did that, and then as a high schooler, my best friend was like a champion kickboxer in tournament kickboxing. So I got a lot of experience trying to apply this more internal grappling method against somebody who was primarily a striker, and that was a good experience, right? And then I got sick, and my friend, he's like, I want to show you this thing I've been learning for a long time. He's like, I've been doing Yang Tai Chi for like 15 years. In the past few years, I've been doing this Chen Tai Chi. And I don't know what any of this stuff is. I'm like, whatever you got, man. There's no insurance for me right now. This was before the Affordable Care Act came through. I was like, I'm paralyzed on half of my body. I can barely walk. Like he was really like open-hearted with me. And he said, like, it breaks my heart to see you be this young and in this condition. And he's like, I'm going to show you this for free. Just show up when you feel able. So within 6 months, I completed about 500 hours of one-on-one instruction with this man, because I just showed up whether I felt good or not, because I had nothing better, right? Like what else was I had that was offered to me, right? So I sat there with like this, like for months, and then this side started to wake up, and then I was able to do this side sitting, and then eventually like my left leg woke up, and like all of this transformation happened in my body that was incredible. And I went from being curled up and barely able to walk to like, oh, I just got to have knee braces on today and I'll be all right. within 4 months of intense training, I went from like, I need this cane to stand, to I just need some braces today, and I can like walk half a mile to the bus stop and then go to work. So that was an incredible transformation in a very short amount of time.
Fuck, man,
And
your story gave me allergies.
sorry about that.
It's all good. I'm overjoyed, man. That's such a beautiful story. I'm so happy with you.
Thank you. So he took me through mainly the Xinjia material, which is represented by Chen Yu's line in Beijing. And the Chen village, they have their own approach to that material as well. And so at the time, he was primarily studying under Betty Dong, and I believe the other gentleman's name was Chris Ford, and they're disciples of Chen Xiaowang. And so I learned, very systematically in a way that I don't think many people learn, because he just wanted to show it to me in full. And I didn't get any of the long forms for a while. I worked on the 8 energies and the 5 steps, and the 18 silk reeling, and where the 8 energies and the 5 steps are within the 18 different movements. And
Juicy shit. Buck a form. You got the juicy shit. Good.
yeah. And then he's like, I know some Wing Chun too. So now that you're doing a little better and can hold some strength in your body, like, let's show you some Sunim Tao. So I learned that form, and I quickly forgot it. Honestly, I don't do Wing Chun anymore, but that was fun, just for a little change. And so he just kind of played with me, and he was like, all right, now we're going to do some Jianzhong, we'll do some structure testing, and then we're going to do like a dozen different kinds of push hands and stepping patterns, and I'm going to boost you across the cigar factory, and hopefully you're going to land on your feet gently. Let's see if my skill is good.
Wow, fun.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like my experience with Bruce Chu, because it's very mixed plate in the same way. Every day was something different, but it was always based on core principles. And so despite being different, it was always the same.
Right.
And then maybe he didn't teach me so much of the other systems and styles, but he would encourage me. He would say, Hawaii's a melting pot. Go to all the other schools, see all the other systems, look how they structure their styles, look how they lead their classes, notice how they have rapport between student and teacher and coach, notice the energy of the environment. Is it aggressive? Is it competitive? Is it nourishing?
And that's really, honestly, the most important part to finding the school you want to study with long term, is what is that environment, the atmosphere of training like? Because if you can't stick around and get along with the people, how long are you going to be able to train, right?
Yeah, so cool, man. I'm so happy that you had a solid teacher like that, man. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, he was my mentor in the tobacco industry, and so I'd known him for about, I want to say, 5 years before he even ever talked to me about kung fu. Like I just sat there and smoked cigars and rum with him, and like we would drink coffee, and every once in a while he's like, you want to go to the strip club? Like, all right, sure, I'm 20 something, like.
Right on. It reminds me of something Kisu would say, if you know of Kisu.
I'm familiar with Sifu Kisu stars, yeah.
Yeah, he would say a kung fu master is a vulgar, hungry, and horny.
I know how to cook really well. And I sure do like to curse.
I like it when teachers come up with those things, like Kisu is vulgar, hungry, horny. I have a Bagua teacher in Shanghai, Master Ming Qianbo, and his was Bagua, booze, and books. So like you, he loved to read, he loved to drink, and he loves Bagua.
If you mix the booze with bud, that's me.
And if you mix the little bitches in there too, and you got some of me.
Even better.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. So
That
I
was a
have this
joke to our listeners. I'm
right.
happily married of 10 years. I have a child. I am from Richmond, though, so that's my humor to our listeners.
Yeah, to our listeners, I have chronic health conditions. I keep my habits in moderation. It took a long journey to get to that point, Like I don't recommend alcoholism or abuse. Self-medication can help, but let's be real. These can be harmful substances. Um, you know, so uh that is one thing as like an alternative health model of instruction that Qigong is included in is that a lot of people look to us for advice on how to manage their energy, and their diet is a big part of that, and not just like what you eat and drink and the air that you breathe, but also like what you watch and read and listen to, because that's also a form of consumption, right? Like we live in an information universe. Everything is information, that you can tap into on different realms and stuff. And so, like if you are constantly looking at some stuff that is not ideal, then if you don't purify that, it can really affect you through the years.
For sure, man. Talking about that consumption, I got a 1-year-old, and every now and then, my wife needs to sleep in, and I'm on baby duty in the mornings, and I can't watch the child and prepare breakfast, and so I'll have to put on a YouTube video or something just to keep him occupied for 10 minutes while I make his food. And I cannot stand wheels on the bus go round and round, these little 4-count, monotonous, mind-numbing nursery rhymes. Oh my goodness.
You know,
Uh,
my son's almost 5 now. Actually, he just turned 5, and he he didn't get that monotonous song stuff because I can't stand it either, right? I'm like, oh my God, I can't do it. So we would put on things like Team Umizoomi for him at a very young age. And it's literally like math instruction and how to recognize patterns and things like that. So we've been very um conscious of what we allow him to watch and look at on his devices. And also we don't let him play certain games, although right now he's kind of obsessed with this game where he shoots a bow and arrow. It's but he doesn't get to do everything that he wants, right? And sometimes as parents we have to be like, okay, that's maybe for another time. Like when you're older you can more appropriately process that.
wow, you got a 5-year-old, man. I can't wait till my son's 5 and I can start body slamming him.
Oh my God, I started body slamming him at 2, so yeah.
See? Okay, I don't feel so bad. I've already started. I just cradle his
Yeah.
head.
Oh yeah. His mom's already like, he hits so hard, like, you bastard, like, this hurts. Like he's been playing with karambits, since he was able to like pick them up.
Wooden ones, I hope. My goodness.
Well, they're plastic, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And they have like a little knob on the end where the point is, so they're not sharp or anything.
Wow. Your little
But
velociraptor boy.
yeah. The thing was, I did a couple of karambit seminars with Sensei Alessandro or Professor Alessandro Bavoso. Depending on which system he chooses to teach, he'll use a different title, right?
Yeah.
Because he's an instructor of a number of styles. So I can't recall all of them off the top of my head, but I remember looking at it, from a Stockton boy. I saw Angel Caballes in his list of styles that he had studied, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's some legit stuff right there. That Caballes Eskrima is not a joke. I'm gonna go check out these seminars locally. They were affordable, and yeah, so I did some seminars with him with those karambits, and it was really interesting. He basically adapted a lot of the internal aspects of Aikido and made it into a karambit seminar. He called it unconventional karambit.
Cool.
Right? And so
Wow. I can see that. Like,
Yeah.
Aikido with a razor blade in your mouth or something like that? Wow.
Yeah, man. So that was really fun because like I mentioned a moment ago, I did that style as a child, and so I'm saying like this is Funakogi Undo. Like what are we doing? Like this seminar, man. Like and so yeah, he had some really legit Aikido from the Bay Area, and I think he said he studied with Yoshimitsu Yamada, if I recall correctly. I may not be, so please don't get mad at me, anybody, if that's wrong.
I don't know many of these Aikido names. I've only recently stepped into the world of Daichi Ryu
Okay,
through Dan Harden.
I
And,
see. Oh
um,
man, that's
and I
amazing.
had no idea that I stumbled upon a gem with him too. Uh, but he's amazing. And it was because my Kung Fu brother, Raphael Smith, whom I love that guy.
He
He's,
does Song Shingi-chun, right?
yeah. And one of
Okay.
his side toys that really influences his Shingi is his practical method Tai Chi.
Oh yeah, I've encountered some people that do that. It's interesting.
Oh, man, the root work and just, I saw his little ass Korean teacher able to toss him and throw him and just stand in like little, it almost looks magical,
Have you
right?
ever met Carmine Ferrugia?
No.
He's in Sacramento, I want to say Carmichael area on the east side of town, and he's studying under Chen Zhenghua right now, and he could actually kind of contrast the stuff that he studied with Henry Look. He studied with the Chen Qingzhou line, the Lao Jia, really focused, the Sun Gu ancestral Tai Chi,
Yeah.
and
What's that name?
Carmine Ferrugia.
Carmine
He,
Ferrugia. I'm gonna ask my buddy Raphael because he's in Sacramento too.
yeah. So Carmine's an old school guy, and he can on the fly show you the differences between Yang and different child styles of Chen. Like he's been in this for a long time. And I met him at the park with Daniel Pfister and Daniel. Um, I forget the other Daniel's name, but he was, I believe, a Chung Ming practitioner. So that was really incredible. But you're
I met
saying that,
Daniel Pfister once.
yeah, he's
Can I tell
strong,
you that
isn't he?
story?
Yeah, please.
Because I'm so embarrassed. There was this one evening that my wife and I were trying to conceive. Okay, I'm being very vulnerable here to our
Right.
listeners. And you conceive and your energy is a little bit different.
Oh yeah, as a man, your heart starts to open a lot.
So the very next day, after having this ritual with my wife, my jing's a little off.
Right.
And it just happened to be a push hands day. And so I go to a push hands. Usually I make a lot of noise at these push hands events and I do quite well. And these gatherings here in the East Bay draw people from all over California, Reno, Arizona, LA. Like we get all of the West Coast to come to the Bay Area to do push hands.
Right.
And I chose to go to one of these gatherings, and that guy Daniel, if it's the same guy, like Bagua guy from Sac, the Davis area.
Yeah, Davis is where I think he is now. You're right.
Yeah. So he's good. And we were pushing, and I went with a couple of my cronies, and none of us could handle him that day. He served us all.
He
And
studied with Lu Xiaoling in DC.
uh, and so, it was all sweet and fun and, respectful. But in the end, he gave me his business card.
Come
And
see
just
me,
the
right?
way he did it, I just felt so small. I was like, oh, man. I got served. The motherfucker gave me his business card. Oh.
Yeah.
Since then, I've been dying to let fate introduce us again so that we can play again.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get Daniel Pfister and Carmine Ferrugi together for some Tai Chi push hands, brother, you're gonna get some gems dropped on you that day, honestly.
I would
Um,
love it. I would love it.
so you
Because
were mentioning,
I'm in a
I'm sorry,
different place now.
yeah, I'd like to circle back to Raph and Dan Harden.
Yeah. Yeah, so when Raphael started learning from his magical Korean master, I was jealous. I was like, "Ah, my Kung Fu brother is getting this magical shit. I want some magical shit too. So I want to
Right.
search on my own." And I went through, oddly enough, Systema. And I went through a teacher named Ed. And Ed was learning from the big boys, Vladisov and Michael. And, you know, he was learning, he was one of the OG Systema guys.
Right.
And so he would trade me, he would teach me Systema for Neigong. And so we would trade, and we'd come to find that we were doing the exact same shit. And it was
Dude,
really, really cool.
I
Right.
think it's Luke Hobbs in Australia. Have you seen his channel?
Yeah, Luke is dope too.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're doing all this Systema stuff and we're trading for internals. And then he turned me on to one of his coaches, Bernie Langan, who's
Oh,
also a
I was
local.
recommended to see Bernie at one point when I was first introduced to Bagua locally. He's like, listen, if you want to learn all the medical stuff with this, you got to go see Bernie. That was
He's a
Tony Park.
savant. Bernie
Yeah.
is a savant. I think he's on the spectrum. He's got some like Rain Man thing going on.
Okay.
He's brilliant. You know, no disrespect for calling him on the spectrum, but he's got some kind of photographic memory. I remember visiting him, and the motherfucker started reciting classics, and he was able to go to the book and go directly to the fucking page. He has a photographic memory.
I had that prior to the stroke that I experienced at 23. So I had a photographic memory. And so that was a big adjustment for me, as somebody who's trying to learn like a new art. Was like, how do I remember this? And a lot of it is I just keep it on my computer's hard drive and just remind myself on a regular basis what this material is and return to it, and you know, kind of circle back with that spiral of understanding. You know, now that I'm at a different coil, a little bit higher, like I look at the base material, like, oh, okay, this is what I need to work on. Like I can see the subtlety of the body mechanics, you know, that our seniors have recorded for us at their point of development at that time. You know, it's really amazing the technology that we have now that enables us to learn.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's Bernie Langan.
Right.
So through Ed, I got introduced to Bernie Langan. Through Bernie Langan, I got introduced to Dan Hardin. And when I met Dan Hardin, he affirmed my skill. And he's like, wow, you have Dantian, you have root, you have connection. Wow. Okay, you have good training. Let's go. So then when I started training with Dan Hardin, I started getting some of that magical shit.
Right.
I hit up my boy Raphael. I'm like, wow, we're doing the exact same thing, except we call it Daichi Ryu. We go through this Japanese viewpoint, and he's doing Chen practical method going through Chinese by way of a Korean viewpoint.
Right.
But we're all doing the same shit.
Well, sure, because the theoretical underpinnings are identical when it comes down to it. If you look at the Daitoryu stuff on Chris Lee's website, where he does all that wonderful translation, like, thank you so much, Chris Lee. If you ever watch this, I really want to give you a huge thank you. But you know, that Sangenkai Hawaii website has so much material about Aikido, and they have 5 elements, and they have the Bakwa, and they have Taiji, and you know, there's the floating bridge of heaven, and you know, all of this mystical sounding stuff that in China is still preserved very concretely, right? Like there are still people that can say this is how you physically express this trigram and this element, and this yin is yin, and this is yang, and this is the contrast, and here's how you understand it. I was taught that way. Not many people are, you know, and so when you have that level of understanding of what your art actually does, like how the engine works, then you can see where, oh, that art has it, and that art has it, and that art has it. And they focus on this aspect, and then we focus on this aspect, and they focus on that aspect. And usually it's just like Xingyi Chuan is like this microcosmic orbit. Taiji Chuan, they like to do this one along the side. And then, you know, Bagua, it's like this diagonal one, right? Or like interwoven circles too, you know. So there's all these different ways of working with the same theoretical knowledge and foundation that you know, a lot of it is just how do you wrap your mind around it properly to produce the physical result.
If I mention in this conversation how much I like you,
Thank you.
bet, man. Hey, what's our time frame look like? We're already into
Yeah,
an hour and
we're
change.
we are at 11:17 right now. So is there anything that you wanted to talk about, like for your local offerings before we sign off today?
Uh, you know, that always comes up. These podcasts, I've done a lot of them, especially over pandemic. And inevitably they go, where can our listeners find you? And I say, don't, don't find me. Something that really resonated with me, again, with that Dragon Gate lineage, with Ray Carbolito and Chris Lee Matsuo, they're closed door.
Right.
They don't promote, they don't advertise, they don't market. They would
Yeah.
rather not be known and recognized.
And
And
that's
I
kind of
adopted that.
important, right? It's
Yeah,
kind of
I adopted
important.
that.
That's where
And
the quality assurance comes in.
yeah, and here we are now, 10 years of my organization. You know, you could probably sense I'm spicy and I'm abrasive, and I have a capacity to offend people.
Right.
And not intentional. Those that come to know me know I have the biggest heart and I only want to love and share. However, I do have a rough exterior, you know, and some people find it hard to distinguish lamp from light, right?
Mm.
And so I don't want to promote, I don't want to advertise, because I also have a charisma, you know, I also have a look and I can attract a lot of people. But then once people come, I have to keep them happy. I have to tailor to the customers, and I have to service them and meet their needs. And then am I being authentic? Am I honoring this tradition, or am I in customer service?
Mm.
And so in that way, because we're closed door, the people that find us, they came looking for us, you
Right.
know, and they kind of know what to expect when they find us. And if they heard about us, it's probably from someone that had a good experience, because we operate by word of mouth.
Mm.
And we're big on adding value to people's lives. That's why I really appreciated you when you said at the head of this conversation, we tailor and modify specific to the individual. And I
Yeah.
think that's important, because Qigong is for you. You know, Qigong is for
Right.
all of us. It's not
How do you
for,
manage your energy?
yeah. So, you know, we take on that view. And so when people have a good experience, they're going to go and tell their loved ones and friends. And 10 years later, we have a sizable community that's just been organic word of mouth.
Right.
So when I get on these platforms that could potentially reach millions, don't come looking for me. Leave me alone. Taoists are non-evangelical by nature.
Right.
Wudang was a mountain. I had to go to the mountain. My teacher didn't come to me.
Right.
And
You're not
so,
Muhammad, right?
yeah, I'm not trying to evangelize. I'm not on no soapbox saying come one, come all. I don't have a
Right.
gospel to share. I'm just here practicing. And the people that seek that will find us, and it'll be great. So,
That's beautiful. You know, I kind of have a little bit more of a open door for my teachings, because I also have some other schools that I represent, and I feel like my understanding is unique, and I would like that to go forward. You know, so you know, I don't teach just from the Kenny Gong school, or just from the Dragon Gate Sanctuary school, or just from Han Shui Yichuan, like all of these things, or just from Chen Tai Ji. You know, like all of these things inform what it is I do, what it is I teach. You know, like if somebody's having a difficulty and I have a tool from a specific style that I feel is appropriate to give them, I'm going to give them that tool that day,
absolutely.
regardless of where it comes from, right? And so I feel like that understanding that I have systematized is approachable enough for somebody to like maybe start to work with the system, right? Instead of just like this unique understanding and that sort of thing. It's like I can give somebody like stepping stones to get to somebody like you or Ray or Tim, you know, like if they have a good experience with me and they're really a good student, like I might give them an intro, right? But you know, like there's got to be somebody who's at the gate, you know.
For
And
sure, for sure.
that's something that, you know, was given to me by spirit guides. You know, so I was asleep, and at 3 a.m. I woke up and it's like, this is the purple cloud. I was like, oh shit, what the fuck am I hearing right now? And I was like, the purple cloud. Okay, like you are the it was like the librarian basically, right? Like that was the function that was communicated to me. It was like, you have to preserve this knowledge as much as possible in the way that you do, so that people can make that step to the mountain, because you have to climb the mountain, but you also have to know how to climb, right? So, you know, you might want to go to the rock gym a little first before you get up on that rock wall that's on the side of the hill, right?
And also be mindful which mountain you're climbing and how it's climbed too, because you might be going to Lhasa. You might have to prostrate the whole way.
Right.
Matt, this has been an absolute joy, man. And thank you for bringing up purple clouds, because my master from Wudang, he was formerly trained as a priest in Purple Heaven Palace. And someone just yesterday asked, we recently moved into a new temple space here. And someone recently asked what we're going to call it. And I was thinking of calling it some kind of purple cloud haven, purple cloud, you know, urban hermitage or something like that.
Right.
Thank you for affirming. Yeah, I work in synchronicities. So when numbers come up and things come up from random places, like this conversation.
Right. I work in a similar way personally. I understand that it's like, okay, I'm listening. I hear you. Like
Yeah,
I'll do it.
yeah, I like this conversation, how every, you know, neural networks like, tick, oh yeah, heavy things. Oh yeah, Guang Ping Yang. Oh yeah. So many networks connected today.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. I just wanted to express how grateful I am for, I know you're very busy. So
Right
have a
on.
great.
I got some clients coming up and I want to put my son down for a nap. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
giving me some
important
space.
that they get
Yeah,
the rest, and I got to get to work. So have a great one.
good deal. Aloha, brother.
Aloha.